Hello, I'm Charlie Brooker, and you're watching 2015 Wipe, a programme about things that happened in 2015. Things like this.
Storm Desmond swept in, giving Britain its annual bath. On Sky News, Jeremy Corbyn sang happy birthday to a flood victim and reduced her to tears.
Thereby adding to the floodwaters, the idiot. Sky News grief vampire Kay Burley tweeted a picture of a dog looking sad after the Paris attacks. It's heartening, really, to know that even a simple animal can post photos like that on Twitter. In a mortifying TV moment at the Brit Awards, Madonna was accidentally yanked downstairs by a minion. In case you're wondering how it feels to be pulled off by a dancer in front of an audience of record execs, ask your dad. Fans were ecstatic at the release of a thrilling new Star Wars film. If you haven't seen it and you're a bit worried about spoilers, just close your eyes for 2 seconds. OK, you can open them now. Oh, shit, sorry. Thought you still had them closed. There were incredible scenes as British astronaut Tim Peake blasted into space. He's on a daring mission to rescue the man
Stranded on the moon in that trite and sentimental John Lewis advert.
They called him a hero, but the way the world's going to me, he looks more like a guy chickening out and using an escape pod. All well and good, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. Usually, the first few weeks of January are kind of uneventful. Not this time.
Barbaric scenes in Paris. 12 people have been shot dead after masked men stormed the offices of a French magazine.
Oh, God, sorry, everyone. I was hoping to keep it light for the first 5 minutes of this year's show, but this is what happened. Bloody world.
In the days that followed, a depressing can of world leaders shuffled along a Parisian street while countless citizens pledged their commitment to freedom of speech.
While on apocalypse-ready Fox News, massive anchors were on hand to suggest a nuanced response to the threat at the very top of their lungs.
We need to kill them. We need to kill them. Bomb them, and bomb them again.
Still, January wasn't exclusively depressing, no, because an advert appeared which was apparently the funniest thing ever.
Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me?
Yes, this light-hearted commercial in which a sort of disturbing half-apprentice contender, half-Beyoncé centaur twerks his way around the city streets became officially the most hilarious thing that's ever happened. Soon the man behind, or more accurately inside Dave's epic strut, was appearing in all manner of promo opportunities around the capital. He even appeared on daytime culture stalwart This Morning to meet Amanda and Phil.
Oh.
Epic. I've forgotten about Charlie Hebdo already. Later in the year, the Sun newspaper mocked up a psychosexually confusing front-page image of George Osborne doing the epic strut after it was impressed with his budget. Tell you what, this is going in my big scrapbook of sexy George Osborne pictures.
What do you make of the your picture on the front of the Sun this morning? You happy with that?
Yeah, I almost spilt my coffee this morning when I read the front page of the Sun.
Yeah, whatever. Shut up. Come on, give us a twirl. Show us your legs. February was a month when humankind was bitterly divided over colours. Thanks to a mundane photo on social media, this became the single most notorious dress since the one Bill Clinton accidentally laminated in the Oval Office. Problem was, no one could agree what colour the dress was, something every news show on Earth expertly illustrated with fascinating vox pops.
I'm going to go with blue.
Lilac. It's blue.
Well, now it's black and blue, actually.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
You know there's a war on, yeah? What colour do you think that is? According to the boffins, your reaction to the dress depended largely on how your brain works, i.e. if your brain works, you couldn't give a shit what colour it is. In illuminating scenes on Sky News, Kay Burley was so bamboozled gawping at the dress, she couldn't see she was trying to talk to a still image of a man instead of a live human.
Joining us now from Cardiff is Dr Ashley Wood, a lecturer at the School of Optometry and Vision Science. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. What colour did you see it as, first of all?
Oh, look at the sadness in his eyes.
There was this sort of film thing called 50 Shades of Grey. It was like a cross between a romantic drama and a documentary warning women about a maniac on the loose. There was this woman in it who found herself in a submissive, violent relationship with a dominant man.
She goes to interview this rich businessman called Christian Grey, who's become a billionaire despite not being able to pull facial expressions.
How about we try a few with a smile?
He's a massively successful billionaire CEO with his name all up in huge lettering on stuffy ons, like Donald Trump, but younger and better looking, and a bit less of a burgeoning fascist tyrant who the world must stop at any cost. Actually, he sort of looks like Colin Firth, but done in Lego. You can see why she falls for him. He's handsome, he's rich, he flies around in a helicopter, he plays the piano with his tits out, and he's got a secret red room containing the world's biggest collection of bum sticks and things you hit horses with.
Anyway, at the start of the film, he's a characterless, controlling sadist, but gradually, as their relationship blossoms, he stays that way. It's basically a film adaptation of Punch and Judy, because it's about this weird wooden man who enjoys beating a woman, but without the bit where a crocodile steals some sausages, which might have redeemed it. As a film, it looks glossy and modern, but it's basically your old-fashioned standard romance. Boy meets girl, boy psychologically dominates girl, girl acquiesces to boy's every demand, boy hits girl with crop, boy hits girl with fluffy stick thing, boy ties girl up and yanks girl's hair, boy hits girl with belt and girl leaves boy having explored the wilder fringes of her own sexuality in a carefully controlled, albeit unrealistic environment.
Way back in 2014, controversial human exhaust pipe Jeremy Clarkson had run into trouble for allegedly using a racist word in a Top Gear outtake, after which he was on his final warning with the BBC. So all he had to do in 2015 was keep a low profile. Maybe not punch anybody. Should be easy.
Just to tell you that we are just hearing from the BBC that Jeremy Clarkson has been suspended.
Oh, Jeremy. At first, it wasn't quite clear what had happened. The BBC would only say Clarkson had been involved in a fracas, a word which was soon dancing awkwardly across the lips of every newsreader on earth.
What the BBC called a fracas.
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 Following a fracas.
Following a fracas. Fracas.
Supposed fracas.
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 What do you make of the term, a fracas?
It was a PR fracastrophe.
It turned out that following a strenuous day's work being filmed driving cars in exchange for many thousands of pounds, Clarkson had retired to this hotel, ordered a steak and discovered he could only have a cold meat platter,
which he turned down in favour of some red-hot beef. While Clarkson hung in limbo, the media camped outside his London pad, peering at him through long lenses as he paced around like a depressed polar bear, smoking like polar bears don't. Meanwhile, at street level, a campaign for his reinstatement was beginning to gather steam. David Cameron said he hoped he'd be back on TV.
I hope this can be sorted out because it's a great programme and he's a great talent.
While Gladiator Russell Crowe said he could empathise.
And the thing that I'm sympathetic about towards Jeremy in this particular instance is I know how long a day can be.
Yeah, we've all got clocks, mate.
So if he's made a stated desire, look, that I'll go as hard as I can all day long and all I need at the end of the day is something to eat, I don't think that sounds to me like an unreasonable request, you know.
No, but it sounds like a pretty good personal mission statement. Things were becoming more and more fraught, and as over 1 million people signed a petition for his reinstatement, it looked like the whole thing might spark a civil war.
Just going to show you some pictures from outside this building, namely Broadcasting House in central London, where a petition calling for the reinstatement of Jeremy Clarkson to Top Gear has been delivered to the BBC.
Anyway, eventually the BBC made their decision.
Top Gear presenter Jeremy Clarkson has been dropped from the show.
The news then suddenly became a kind of weird obituary, with people queuing up to pay tribute as though Clarkson had died. Even the Director General joined in.
I've always been a great fan of his work on Top Gear. And I also believe that his voice and voices like his have a place, an important place, on the BBC.
That's good to know. So as long as I carry on speaking like this, my future at the BBC is assured. What is it with the Venezuelans? Bloody animals? Anyway, now Clarkson had gone, there was the little question of where he'd end up. Presumably he could pick and choose his job offers, and we all know how he does that, as seen in this simulation.
Watch, because this is how you do it.
No.
Hello. Back in the spring, as you probably remember, I suddenly became unbusy.
Yes, as this light-hearted advert made clear, in the end he went with Amazon, although it's only a matter of time till he insults the Amazonians. They're definitely going to fire him if he uses the N-word. Netflix. Expectant car fans already can't wait for the new show to launch. I've got a preview here of exactly the kind of tantalising spinning wheel action they can expect. Also in March, celebrity hunchback King Richard III had burial II. They dug him up a few years ago and tried to bring him back to life by sticking a plasticine face on him, but that hadn't worked. He'd stayed dead, so now they were planning to throw him back in the ground, a bit like lobbing back a fish you don't want. As the startling news coverage made clear, R3-D2 now got the respectful burial he'd been denied in life, centuries too late, and at great expense in the weirdest and most arcane royal event since every single other one.
That is an event which will only take place once in all eternity.
Yeah, you know this is his second burial. He'll probably want another one next year, the diva. Old Dickie Double Coffin, that's what I call him.
Soon his royal deadness was lying in Leicester Cathedral disguised as a wooden AT-AT walker from Empire Strikes Back, while funeral likers stood outside watching on a traditional Jumbotron screen, soaking up the comprehensive coverage as Heritage Bandersnatch read a sombre poem specially written for the occasion by the Poet Laureate.
My bones, scripted in light upon cold soil.
Nothing like bloody poetry to bring the mood down at a good funeral. Finally, the entire nation watched in silent solemnity as a group of uniformed men filed into the back of Leicester Cathedral to lovingly bury their dick in the ground. Cool, look, you can see him going in. In April, there was no ignoring the forthcoming general election. As the election campaign began, honey roast Prime Minister David Cameron, seen here frequenting his local dead pig parlour, came in for some criticism. People were saying his heart wasn't in it, as he didn't want to serve 3 terms.
Terms are like shredded wheat. 2 are wonderful, 3 might just be too many.
I'm surprised he eats shredded wheat for breakfast. Don't know why, I just always pictured him getting stuck into some bacon. HRH Cam Sandwich was also accused of avoiding debate, which is something of a character trait, what with his weird habit of abruptly walking out of shot the nanosecond he's had enough of answering reporters' questions. Don't know why he keeps walking away like that. Maybe he's one of those shy Tories they keep going on about. It's easy to see why he'd be daunted by his chief opponent, human balloon animal Ed Miliband, a fiery public speaker accustomed to winning over audiences with his powerful rhetoric and catchphrases like, "Oh." Miliband had something of an image problem, which wasn't exactly helped when, in an early head-to-head meeting with weary human fight Jeremy Paxman, he dealt with questions about his leadership qualities about as convincingly as Stevie Wonder auditioning for the lead role in American Sniper.
The point is, people think you're just not tough enough. Well, let me tell you, right? Let me tell you. OK.
Come on.
Let me tell you.
Quick, everyone, set perineum to cringe.
Am I tough enough? Tough enough? Hell yes, I'm tough enough.
But in the weeks that followed, Miliband began shedding the geek image, developing the kind of carefree, approachable persona that can only be pummeled into you by weeks of intensive media training. Some people felt he was no longer an embarrassment, but a heartthrob, Edward Boy Band, with a growing army of admirers known as the Millie Fandom, who cluttered up the internet with sexy fantasy imagery. Cameron, by contrast, seemed a little underpowered and was making uncharacteristic campaign gaffes. He got a little too close to a farm animal for the first time in his life. He was photographed eating a hot dog with a knife and fork. Good to see him treating a pork product with all the respect it deserves. And on Sky News, he forgot which football team he pretends to support, accidentally naming a different team instead of his beloved Aston Villa.
Where you can support Man United, the Windies and Team GB all at the same time. Of course, I'd rather you supported West Ham.
West Ham? Why is he obsessed with ham? Meanwhile, down-to-earth, top-of-the-people George Osborne was all over the media trying to artificially inflate Britain's employment stats by doing almost every flavour of manual job imaginable. Oh, that's another one for the scrapbook. Look at him, he's so good with his hands. He was constantly in high-vis, working in factories, looking at plans, operating diggers, breaking into the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company. Hang on a minute.
You've just found an extra £8 billion. All I'm asking is, where does it come from? Well, no higher taxes, extra public spending cuts, where?
Of course, Labour v Tory was only one part of the story. There was no escaping the new multiplicity in the leaders' debates as a full peacock's tail feather of different parties fanned out to debate the big issues in scenes resembling a 15-to-1 wannabe tyrant special. This provided a great public hearing for UKIP's Nigel Farage, who finally had got the chance to debate Britain's out-of-control multiculturalism with 6 other white people. He tried to win over the crowd in the first debate with some populist AIDS patient bashing.
There are 7,000 diagnoses in this country every year for people who are HIV positive. 60% of them are not British nationals.
Yeah, you tell them, Nige, bloody foreigners coming over here guzzling our medicine. They're not just ill, they're greedy. Tiny Trump wasn't having the best time of it this campaign. He looked tired and fed up and even turned on the audience and the Metropolitan BBC during debate number 76.
There just seems to be a total lack of comprehension on this panel, and indeed amongst this audience, which is a remarkable audience, even by the left-wing standards of the BBC. I mean, this lot's pretty left-wing.
Hang on. To be fair, the BBC had been subjecting him to some pretty uncompromising questions throughout the campaign.
Did you see the Paddington Bear movie last year?
No.
Racist. Meanwhile, in the Lib Dem camp, Deputy PM Nick Clegg seemed to have decided to enjoy his last few weeks in the spotlight. He was out touring the country like a one-show reporter doing a guide to days out for less with the family. He went bowling, he dangled off a zip wire, and he dawdled around at a hedgehog sanctuary.
Really poorly. She got maggots in every orifice.
He seemed to be prematurely off duty, kind of relaxed, even apparently enjoying the abuse he was getting on social media, if this illuminating Sun video was anything to go by.
Tom McRae, that Nick Clegg, he's a piece of work, and by work I mean shit. That's nice, Tom.
Faring rather better was the SNP. They'd been growing in confidence ever since they finished an impressive second in last year's yes-no referendum. And now they had a new media-friendly leader in the form of fiery pepperpot Nicola Sturgeon, who became super popular super fast, posing for selfies all over the shop, like a tartan Kardashian. The prospect of Scotland wielding some power seemed terrifying to some quarters of the press, and stoking English fears of this Scottish resurgence was one Tory tactic that seemed to be gaining traction. Maybe that's why in the final days of the campaign, Cameron seemed notably fired up. He was out making bold claims.
Will you put to bed rumours that you plan to cut child tax credit and restrict child benefits to children?
Well, thank you, Jenny, for that question. No, I don't want to do that.
And giving good pep talk.
Taking a risk, having a punt, having a go, that pumps me up, and it's what is changing our country.
Look at that, he's gone pinky and perky. Meanwhile, Ed Miliband was trying to make his own populist appeals by turning up to talk politics with shag-happy Che Guevara Russell Brand.
The Tories want to say this is as good as it gets for the
Yeah.
country. And this isn't as good as it gets for the country.
He also unveiled a granite-based equal rights for stones policy.
He's had his campaign pledges engraved on an 8-foot-tall tablet of limestone.
They're carved in stone because they won't be abandoned after the general election. I want the British people to remember these pledges, to remind us of these pledges.
Yeah, hi, Ed, yeah. Do you remember the time you carved a load of pledges on a massive stone? Oh, he's hung up. But no matter what the leaders said, did or fell off, it seemed the polls were stubbornly failing to shift.
But what if the polling agencies have got it just a little bit wrong?
Welcome to the BBC's Election Centre. 4 minutes from now, when Big Ben strikes 10, we can legally reveal the contents of this, our exit poll.
Anything could happen. It promised to be an epic marathon of constitutional chaos you'd need a degree in woncology to sort out.
That's why I'm set for the longest election night ever. Weeks of negotiation and number crunching, and I'm prepared for it all. To make sense of the results, I've got a load of laptops, I've got a slide rule, a copy of the parliamentary guidelines, that 5D swingometer, Paul the Octopus, a ZX Spectrum, I've got a soothsayer, and to help me stay awake, I've got a thermos flask full of coffee to swig from, I've got a bucket to piss and shit in, and a platter of performance-enhancing drugs. So come on, hit me with the exit poll. Come on, tell me just how complicated and drawn out this is going to be. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be good.
But here it is, 10 o'clock, and we are saying the Conservatives are the largest party.
Oh, what? Bloody octopus is broken.
It seems voters had been trolling the pollsters all along.
It's hard to know, really, how they could make opinion polls any more accurate. Maybe they should ask 2 questions. 1, who are you going to vote for? And 2, no, really, who are you going to vote for? Meanwhile, back in election night, while the Tories chortled their socks off, a full-blown red wedding was occurring for the other parties, as one well-known face after another was toppled. Vince Cable, Jim Murphy, Danny Alexander, Simon Hughes, Ed Balls, Zayn Malik, they all naffed off to Oblivion Villas, and then the Great Purge began. Nigel Farage temporarily sent himself back to where he came from.
And I will consider, over the course of this summer, whether to put my name forward to do that job again.
Nick Clegg showed himself the door.
I will be resigning as leader of the Liberal Democrats.
And Ed Miliband announced a 100% cut in himself.
So I'm tendering my resignation, taking effect after this afternoon's commemoration of VE Day at the Cenotaph.
Must have been a bit depressing for Eddie Baby. Suppose the only way it could have been any more depressing is if a few hours later he had to stand beside the bloke who beat him, laying a wreath to a mournful musical accompaniment in a waking nightmare symbolising the death of his electoral dreams. I mean, thank God he didn't have to do that. Soon, Cambo and Sam, seen here in a white and gold dress, were back at number 10, while on daytime TV post-mortem, some Labour supporters were left sounding a little bitter.
But I think the way that the election went, it kind of shows that this country doesn't deserve a leader who's got so much, like, integrity and principles. I think Ed Miliband's too good for this fucking country, to be honest.
No, you can't swear on daytime television, so I think I will apologise. And would you like to apologise too?
Yes, I'd like to apologise. I shouldn't have sworn. It was very bad of me.
June saw the shocking conclusion of the 5th season of Game of Thrones.
It's based on Lord of the Rings by William Shakespeare, and it's set in sort of Series 1 Blackadder times before dragons became extinct. Pretty much every British actor ever has shown up in it at some point. I think it's like jury service and they get called up. It goes on for ages and you never know who's going to die next, just like Last of the Summer Wine. One of the main characters is called Jon Snow. He's a kind of anguished hero with exceptional hair, which is quite an achievement when you think about how hard it must be to maintain a half-decent male grooming regime by candlelight in a violent fantasy realm. Loads of things have happened to Jon Snow. Every moment of his life has been an incredible journey. He's looked miserable in forests and looked miserable in the snow. He's looked miserable during the night and miserable during the day and miserable because he was about to get off with this beautiful woman and miserable when she shot him with an arrow and miserable in a castle and miserable in a boat looking at a sort of zombie monster thing. He's been on this sort of flat roller coaster of one emotion, which is misery. Until this year, he got knifed by some of the other characters. I'm not sure why, but I think he stole someone's watch.
Another watch.
So then he was left looking miserable on his back in the snow. But properly miserable this time, because let me tell you, getting stabbed really stings. Oh, look at the sadness in his eyes. Now, throughout the year, feminism has been in the headlines for one reason or another.
There were debates about sexism on the internet, and as this illuminating coverage showed, women in Saudi Arabia won the right to vote and posed for virtually meaningless selfies.
Here to explore feminism is Philomena Kunk with one of her moments of wonder.
We used to think men were from Mars and women were from Venus, but scientists now believe they both hatched on Earth thousands, maybe even hundreds of years ago.
But even though there have probably been women on the planet as long as men, for most of that time, the two sides haven't been equal.
The only things that make a woman different from a man are her breasts and vagina, and also his testicles and penis. It's easy to see how these fearsome and almighty genitals convinced generations of men that they were superior.
Back in Queen Victorian times, women weren't allowed to vote, even though we had a female king. So some women formed a gang called the Suffragettes. The Suffragettes did things that were considered shocking at the time, like throwing themselves in front of the king's racehorse.
They did this partly to highlight how unfair it was that women didn't have a vote but horses did, and also because being women, they really liked ponies. They also went on hunger strike, sparking the cool fad for women's diets that continues to this day.
The Suffragettes opened doors for millions of women, whereas before they had to wait for men to open those doors for them.
If it wasn't for the Suffragettes, I probably wouldn't be standing here now. I'd be in a kitchen, where I belong.
Amazingly, it took until 1928 for the women of Britain to be given a vote, and not just a vote, but a vote each, which is fairer.
Even though women had a vote, they were still second class, like a shit stamp. So in the 1960s century, there was a new wave of feminists.
Back in old but still in colour times, women were seen as eye candy, which are sweets you eat just by looking at them. Then in 1970, feminists protested at the Miss World show and threw ink bombs at Bob Hope, ruining his chances of winning. Today, shallow beauty contests are unacceptable and women are more visible everywhere, taking important roles in landmark high-quality television programmes like Game of Thrones and True Detective.
Despite all that, today a woman's half as likely to earn over £50,000 a year than a man. And to add insult to injury, that money will most likely have a picture of a man on it, because most banknotes don't have women on them.
apart from the Queen, who's on all of them. But what is feminism anyway? To find out more, I asked an expert. Hello, who are you?
I'm Mary Evans. I'm a Centennial Professor at the Gender Institute at the London School of Economics.
And what is a feminist?
A feminist is a person, male or female, who thinks that women should have the same human and civic rights as men.
Can a feminist wear makeup?
Well, I'm wearing it at the moment, and so I would think that's perfectly possible.
But if they found out, they might cast you out, do you think?
I'm not sure who would cast me out. I don't think people go around casting people out.
If men were women, do you think they'd have been better at doing feminism than we are?
I don't think men would be any better than women are at putting forward the feminist case.
They're always thinking about sex, aren't they?
Like a lot of people, they're thinking about how to pay their mortgages, how to put food on the table. There are lots of questions to fill up everybody's daily lives.
Mm. So they're just like us, really, aren't they? They've got their own little personalities.
I think they have, and some of those personalities are a lot littler than other personalities, but there's certainly a very, very rich range of them.
Yeah. When a feminist looks in the mirror, do they see an equal woman or a better woman?
They quite often, like all of us, look for what they want to see, and they look for what they hope to see.
You see yourself back to front, don't you, in a mirror? But not upside down. Why is that?
Well, hopefully, because that's the way that mirrors are designed.
What power's a mirror? Sorry, you're not the mirrors expert, are you?
I'm afraid not.
How far have we come? Men in vans still whistle at women in the street, though thanks to feminism, the man in the van might be a woman, and the woman they're whistling at might be a Prime Minister. Next time on Moments of Wonder, I'll be asking, why is the world's hair such a weird colour?
Following the general election, the Labour Party was left wandering around in the wilderness, not really knowing what to do with itself. A bit like Howard from Take That in the late 90s. So they held a leadership raffle to see who could run the party next. The main three contenders were all professional politicians, and you could tell they were professional because they were hard to relate to on any basic human level. I mean, really, look into Andy Burnham's eyes and you experience exactly the same sensation you'd get gazing at a face scribbled on a kitchen appliance. Anyway, the contest was set to go ahead until...
We've just heard in the last few seconds that the veteran left-wing MP, Jeremy Corbyn, has secured his place in the Labour leadership race.
Yes, at the last minute, a bunch of MPs added someone called Jeremy Corbyn to the list for a laugh to see what would happen. The previously unheard-of backbencher, who bore a resemblance to everyone from an old history teacher to an old history supply teacher, had gone unnoticed for decades, but now he was everywhere. And his weird gimmick was that he didn't have a gimmick. I mean, he dresses like a politician from archive footage, specifically Jeremy Corbyn in 1984.
Is that the jumper that your mum made? Yes, it is. She didn't make the shirt as well, I suppose. No, she didn't make the shirt. That came from the co-op.
And what that means is, rather than looking polished, he looks sort of normal. He looks like just some bloke, someone you might see trying to buy a grab bag of salt and vinegar discos at a motorway service station branch of Smiths and having to call for assistance because the sensor thing can't read the barcode. And these days, that's inspiring. To use a highbrow illusion, putting Jeremy Normal Corbyn into the media glare alongside the professional politicos was a bit like when they put Chantel, who at the time was a normal member of the public, into Celebrity Big Brother Season 4, and she quickly won over viewers just by not being one of the elite she was sharing a space with. If Corbyn Mania was like that, there was every chance that just like Chantel, he might win. Or at least get off with Preston. Sure enough, Corbyn soon started building support, with people queuing round the block to see him. Months ago, no one even knew who he was, and now suddenly, people would pack a hall to the rafters just to watch him piss in a teacup. And his anti-establishment stance was starting to win an audience.
There was a quote from you in the Sun newspaper today from a video you did. Would you stand by those remarks?
I don't know what the remarks are, because I don't buy the Sun newspaper.
Labour were furious. Under Miliband, the leadership rules had changed, meaning anyone could join the party and have a vote for £3. It's just silly. Labour's supposed to represent the voice of the people. You can't let just anyone have a say in that. Labour weren't the only critics of the potential Labour leader. Some did their best to paint him as the ultimate red menace. Even Panorama seemed to be trying to make him seem sinister, which was quite a tall order given his appearance was about as non-threatening as it gets. We heard him singing socialist anthems, saw him mingling with Tory-hating hardliners.
Get your grubby hands off it, you thieving Tory bastard!
And heard chilling tales of Corbyn's true nature from those who knew him best.
So, for example, if you run into him on a train, as I have done on one occasion, he'll immediately get out his box of sandwiches, which are vegetarian, of course, and cut them in half and give half to you.
That means he carries a knife on a train. And look, his shadow's out of sync with his body. That's weird. Probably means he's a vampire or something.
That voice cannot be silenced. That voice cannot be stopped. That power cannot be denied.
In the end, party members and anyone with a spare £3 knocking around ignored all the warnings and elected Corbyn leader.
Jeremy Corbyn elected as leader of the Labour Party.
Oh, look at the sadness in Andy Burnham's eye.
The news media soon made it apparent old Gorbachev had an unusual manner with reporters, almost as if he didn't like them.
There's people bothering me. We're not bothering you. We're from the press.
This was possibly because they'd been criticising the way his cabinet was put together and accusing him of links with anti-Semites and terrorist sympathisers.
But then again, the press went out of its way to criticise him for more or less everything. They accused him of being scruffy, of failing to sing the national anthem, dithering about kneeling in front of the Queen, not bowing with a sufficiently respectful angle at the cenotaph, and using a stunt dog double to win Britain's Got Talent. Of course, Red Jez couldn't avoid media attention forever and was eventually forced to do the rounds, at which point his unrehearsed style even surprised some of the reporters.
Normally, politicians, they know their answers before you've even asked the question, but Jeremy Corbyn last night almost, frankly, seemed to be thinking aloud.
Thing is, sometimes it was hard to tell whether Corbyn's brand of scruffy unprofessionalism made him refreshing or, well, just a bit crap. Like when during his big conference speech, he read the instructions "strong message here" off the auto cue.
And strong message here. Not cutting student numbers.
Ha! Bloody amateur. CB lifts mug and drinks coffee. Stupid Corbyn, cut to footage of Corbyn. But of course, Corbyn's got bigger problems than mere auto-cue gaffes. For one thing, he's broadly viewed as a throwback to a long-forgotten era of militant leftist politics. Most of his own MPs didn't really want him as leader. He seems incapable of keeping dissent in check within his own party, and his ideological stance puts him at odds with huge swathes of the electorate. Add it all together, and many would say he's completely and utterly unelectable. Yeah, well, that's what they said about Ed Miliband.
The Tories were delighted by Corbyn's victory and later in the year used their conference as an opportunity to try and seize the centre ground.
We are the builders.
Of course, the problem with straddling left and right is you end up in an awkward position, as this photo proved. Nice spread leg shot, another one for the scrapbook.
The man of the moment was also on hand to only mildly gloat about the election results.
I don't know about you, but it only takes 2 words to cheer me up.
Pig's mouth? Sorry, couldn't help it.
Exit poll.
Oh, right, yeah.
He also took the time to fling some cuss at Corbyn by taking something he'd said about Osama bin Laden out of context.
He thinks the death of Osama bin Laden was a tragedy.
God, it'd be awful if we found some things Cameron had said and used them out of context.
Do you know what? Christians and Muslims, we can't really live together, and suicide bombing's all right in Israel.
Really? I'm surprised to hear you say that.
Well, of course, I don't support terrorism, but a caliphate, is that such a bad idea?
God, this is strong stuff, Dave. What would you say to anyone thinking of supporting you?
My friends, we cannot let that man inflict his security-threatening, terrorist-sympathising, Britain-hating ideology on this country we love.
In July, one reckless dentist made everyone in the world say, "Oh."
Forget sticking a drill into a canine, the media revealed dentist Walter Palmer had flown to Africa and stuck an arrow in a feline.
Didn't even give him a "I was a brave lion today" sticker. No, just bloody deaded the thing. And it wasn't just any old lion, any old lion, any old lion. No, he'd killed Cecil the lion. Cecil had appeared in photographs and adverts, attended the opening of literally hundreds of gazelles. He'd released a sizzling sex tape, and now he was dead. The outcry was immediate and vocal.
It's like going out porpoise fishing, right? And getting Flipper. Imagine whacking Flipper.
Shut him down! Shut him down!
He's despicable. He's a killer. He's a murderer.
The outrage grew across all media and folks soon found out where Walter Palmer lived, partly because the details were leaked online, but mainly because he had the words "lion killer" painted on his garage.
I mean, that's just adding insult to injury.
Worse still, the coverage made clear Walter Palmer had previous for beast murder.
Back then, no one cared about the other animals he'd killed because they didn't have names. Or at least I don't think they did. Maybe he shot their names off too, the bastard. Anyway, while the outrage grew, the butcher himself was lion low, while emotions were still raw. Dead lion jokes.
As the news revealed, tributes to Cecil eventually reached Lady Di proportions as landmarks were draped in his dead mane.
Earlier this month, Cecil's face was projected onto New York's Empire State Building. And for a moment, even in this concrete jungle, he was still king.
Eventually, everyone moved on. Cecil stayed dead, and Walter Palmer calmly went back to his day job drilling holes in the faces of blameless children. Sorry, what do you want, a just world? You're f***ing dreaming.
There was this faraway Times man called Ted Heath, who's dead now, but is still alive in all the footage of him. And he was either this sort of famous Prime Minister who reformed local government and took Britain into the EU, or one of the most horrific monsters our country has ever seen. And it wasn't clear which one he was. I think they were twins. One was called Ted Heath, and the other one was Edward Heath. I mean, they kept talking about both of them on the news.
Former Prime Minister Sir Edward Heath.
Ted Heath.
Edward Heath.
Ted Heath. Edward Heath.
Sir Ted Heath.
Sir Edward Heath.
They were the first twins to ever be Prime Minister. Prime Ministers. Primes Ministers. I don't know what the right term is. Thing is, because he looks the same as himself in all the pictures, when you watch the footage, you can't tell which of the Heath twins he is. The good one or the evil one, if there was an evil one, or a good one. It's totally confusing, and that's probably how he got away with it for so long, if he did get away with it. Or the other one did, or didn't. There was another dead politician called Little Britain, and he'd been accused of terrible things too. And again, no one knew if he'd done those things or not. But there's this detective called Tom Watson, who just wouldn't drop the case. I think he works for the Labour Party branch of the police. People got cross with him and called him a witch hunter, but they'll shut up pretty quickly the day he finally does catch a real witch.
Entertainment. An ITV introduced a bewildered and blameless nation to Flock Stars, a celebrity sheepdog trial which is only slightly less harrowing than the year's other celebrity trials.
It was Strictly come dogging, basically. In fact, just like Strictly, when I look at the pairings, I'm never quite sure which one's the famous one. And I can't help wondering if they're going to end up doing it.
Bess and Tony Blackburn.
I like the cuddles.
Time to release the sheep.
Here they come. It's the Hebrideans.
Oh, God, talk about lowering the bar.
Away.
Flock Stars was just the latest in a string of doomed attempts at aping the cosy, patriotic success of the Great British Bake Off by pummelling something quintessentially British into a sort of format shape. It could be filed alongside the Great British Sewing Bee, the Big Allotment Challenge, and that other one, the pottery thing. Surely there's hardly any British bullshit left. What's next? The Great British Pavement? Strictly pub menu? Viral racist bus rant of the year? Music contests, too, have been looking increasingly desperate.
For instance, to mark the 100 years he might have lived to had he not died 17 years previously, the BBC wanted to salute the genius of charismatic croonsmith Frank Sinatra, seen here showcasing his seductive voice and exuberant wanking technique.
Luck be a lady tonight.
Anyway, they marked the anniversary by paying tribute to old Blue Eyes in the classiest way possible, with a ropey talent show called Frank Sinatra Our Way, hosted by Pointless star Alexander Armstrong and Pointless star Rochelle Humes.
This is Frank Sinatra Our Way.
Closer than pages that they can apart. We're closer than ripples that flow in a brook.
Bit of a strange way to honour Frank Sinatra, really, by encouraging almost anyone to take to the stage and dismantle his musical legacy. Sort of like paying tribute to Sir Christopher Wren by making a monkey assemble some flat-pack furniture.
You do it really, really well. But I can't remember Frank when you're doing it. That's the only problem, unfortunately.
I think that's a kind of good thing, because we are making it so much our own way
yes.
that you almost forget anyone else saying it.
Yeah, sod Sinatra. Airbrush him from history. Frank who? Glitzy establishment crooner spawning plant The X Factor was also looking wobbly this year as it responded to dwindling ratings by upping its cruelty content, leading to unedifying scenes of contestants begging live on air.
I will prove to you, I will change your mind. I'm not forgettable. I'm unforgettable.
Still, if X Factor needs a new gimmick for next year, maybe it could look to Japan and its new grotesque adult talent contest, Sing What Happens, in which contestants have to stay in tune while being masturbated. It's not so much a game show, more a metaphor for everything. In September, Prime Minister David Cameron was accused of inserting his penis into the mouth of a dead pig. Can I have a glass of water, please? Yes, the Daily Mail printed extracts from a biography of David Cameron, alleging that while a student, he'd taken part in a bizarre initiation ceremony, during which he'd inserted his penis into the mouth of a dead pig, a statement I still can't believe I'm reading aloud on BBC television. Seriously, this is like dreaming while awake. For a while, the Trad TV News couldn't quite bring itself to discuss the ins and outs of the pig face allegations, preferring to mince words.
The unauthorised biography includes allegations about Mr Cameron's student days, that he smoked cannabis and took part in a bizarre initiation ceremony.
There is a quite extraordinary account of David Cameron's sort of hijinks at university. A little bit more than hijinks, it has to be said.
We actually can't say some of the other things he's accused of doing on TV. We're going to have to leave it at that.
But in the alternative dimension of social media, it was Christmas Day in 3D, with pig joke piled upon pig joke like so much violated sausage meat. It didn't take long for the dam to burst, and the allegations soon defiled otherwise straight-laced morning debate shows.
You know, you've also got this issue of the Prime Minister putting his cock in a dead pig's mouth. I mean, how is that
OK, Dan, do you know what, mate? Right, one, it's an allegation. Two, your choice of language in referring to that, I think, far goes beyond what is permitted at this time of the day. And at that point, really, you've forfeited any right to speak on this show, so bye-bye. What a waste of a call. Let's try another.
We've got Lewis on line 2.
Eventually, the nationwide chortling reached such a peak it was reported workplace productivity was suffering.
But amidst the hilarity, some were wondering whether maybe, just maybe, the allegations weren't entirely reliable. For one thing, Cameron was denying it, and for another, the book had been co-authored by Tory donor Lord Ashcroft, who, by his own admission, had an axe to grind with Cameron. And it all boiled down to one rumour from one anonymous source. Could have been anyone, could have been Keith Lemon. It was a bit like a dirty protest, and people like me, who wanted it to be true just because it was so irresistibly funny, were the ones daubing someone else's shit up the cell walls of the collective unconscious. And it was working. It even amused loose women.
The funniest thing is that the British public see the possibility as entirely plausible, although it has put me off sausage for life.
The book's co-author and chronic smirker, Isabel Oakeshott, was all over the media defending the noble tradition of spreading uncorroborated rumours from a single potentially unreliable source.
Where's the evidence for the allegations that you make in the book, especially the ones about the dead pig?
Look, this is just a few paragraphs in the middle of a book which is some 200,000 words long.
Yeah, come on, guys. There's only a hint of pig f***ing in it.
Do you think the stuff about the pig is true?
We're not there to write a hagiography. There are some difficult things in there, and there are also plenty of extremely complimentary, flattering things about the Prime Minister in there as well.
Oh, what kind of compliments? Let me guess. He was the best dead pig's head the world has ever seen. To be honest, the whole thing left me particularly feeling a bit weirded out. You see, a few years ago, I wrote a drama for Channel 4 in which a fictional Prime Minister was blackmailed into having sex with a pig. And lots of things in that show played out much the same as they were now. There were people in newsrooms bemoaning the fact they couldn't run the story.
If we mentioned bestiality pre-Watershed, Ofcom would be seriously pissed off.
Fuck Ofcom. There were people making wisecracks on Twitter, even using some of the same hashtags. The vindictive stunt impacted cruelly on the people at the centre.
Nothing is going to happen.
It's already happening in their heads.
And the whole thing played out as a kind of national sport, bringing the nation to a standstill. At the end of Black Mirror, the PM's reputation survives intact, and a few months on, David Cameron doesn't seem to have suffered too much from his piggy scrape, although the mental image is still too powerful and amusing for some of his opponents to drop.
The irony is the collective thunder chuckle overshadowed somewhat more pointed allegations in the book, which the Prime Minister also denied.
I think it's important that this allegation that he knew more about Lord Ashcroft's non-dom status than he had previously said he did, that's not lost in the more lurid and humorous allegations that many people are talking about.
Good point, Nicola. Let's hope no one lets that happen.
The Prime Minister's attitude to Scotland betrays the worst characteristics of his government. Arrogant, patrician, out of touch, pig-headed, some might say.
a pig. He f***ed a pig. Or he didn't. Or he did. Or he didn't. Or he did. Or he didn't. Or he did.
Usually people from Europe go off somewhere hot on holiday, but this year, loads of people from somewhere hot tried to come over here.
You've got a swarm of people coming across the Mediterranean, seeking a better life.
Normally I think fair enough, but when I read the papers, you could tell from the language they used that these weren't quite normal people. I mean, they look normal on the telly, but when you read about them, you realise they must have had insect DNA or something, because it sounded like there was sort of infestation swarming in.
They couldn't have been real humans because people were writing things about them that would be utterly unforgivable if they were.
The people said there were migrants coming here in droves, which is interesting because I've never heard of a country called Migratia, and I don't know what a drove is. The migrants couldn't hack it back home just because they're caught in a crossfire between a bloodthirsty extremist death cult and a desperate, amoral military regime, both of which will stop at nothing to kill anyone in their way. But we've all got problems. I mean, I don't know what it's like where I live, but you don't hear me moaning about it and hopping on a drove.
The coverage made it crystal clear they were headed for Europe because they wanted a better way of life, with benefits and a health service and houses that weren't all on fire or made of rubble. While they were waiting for the free house and money, the migrant swarms would build a sort of nest called a camp. The BBC did a special Songs of Praise from one of the nests, and the papers weren't happy. And nor was I. Songs of Praise is meant to be a music show, so why is it suddenly getting all preachy about things?
Anyway, just as I was really getting into hating the migrants, there was a massive twist that I hadn't seen coming.
When the police arrived here this morning, they found several drowning victims. Among them, a toddler, a child of perhaps 2 years of age.
This boat sank, and there was a photo of a little boy lying dead on the beach, and he looked just like a real human, because he was. And then I thought, wait a minute, what if they're all real humans? And then I thought, oh my God, that'd be awful. I mean, if that was true, this whole thing would be an unprecedented crisis. And to their credit, after that photo, the papers did some investigating and found out the migrants were real people, so their coverage totally changed. They realised they got it wrong, so they started shouting at David Cameron to do something about it, to give them a home.
Today I can announce that we will do more, providing resettlement for thousands more Syrian refugees.
I feel sorry for him, because he'd only just found out they were humans too, you know. Everyone was caught in the op here.
The news had all this footage of them all desperately squeezing onto trains and marching on foot in huge snaking columns. But now it looks sort of different, less swarmy and threatening, and more harrowing and urgent and sad. And the clever thing was, it was the same sort of pictures you'd seen earlier, but now you knew the twist about them being humans, it seemed totally different. It was like the white and gold dress. Once it's flipped to blue and black in your head, that's it. You can't see it any other way forever. Well, until Paris happened. Then they went back to being a swarm of bastards and criminals again.
2015 was, of course, the year fictional construct Marty McFly arrived in futuristic Hill Valley in the light-hearted blockbuster Back to the Future 2. So naturally, people were keen to compare how the movie's vision of today had fared with the reality. And the truth is, our present-day reality is even more sophisticated. I mean, in the made-up 2015, people used hoverboards to zip around on, whereas today, arseholes have actually evolved wheels. In Back to the Future, they had robots in service stations, whereas today, we've already got robots in our homes, such as Pepper, the social companionship robot, who went on sale this year in Japan, promoted by this eerie, haunting video.
よかった。よかったのに泣くんですか？いいの。女心はよくわからないですね。
Surely no one could really bear sharing their home with an emotionally void, blank-faced robot that's chained to an iPad all day long. At least that's what my wife keeps telling me via text.
僕はペッパー。
But even that wasn't the creepiest technology story of the year.
I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Ashley Madison's right. I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Ashley Madison's right. I'm looking for someone other than my wife.
Yes, this hideous commercial was advertising online cheat mode enabler Ashley Madison, which promised secret affairs for wannabe shagabouts. The site did look really safe, as though you could trust it with your most sensitive secrets. I mean, it had a photo of a woman going shh on the front and a graphic of a padlock, so it was hard to see what could possibly go wrong.
Computer hackers have stolen millions of items of customer data from an online adultery website called Ashley Madison.
The hackers put the names of everyone who'd been on there on the dark web, which is the sort of internet you look at with the lights off. Anyway, now no one knows where the next privacy breach is going to come from, but we know it's coming. They can hack anything now. Phones, laptops, tablets, webcams. I heard they can even hack into mirrors, like bathroom mirrors, so everyone in Russia can watch you going for a shit. If you've got a mirror in front of your toilet, like I have, for personal reasons. It's almost hard to remember that a few years ago the world was terrified of Al-Qaeda. ISIS make Al-Qaeda look like crowded house. ISIS began as something many in the West psychologically portioned off as happening somewhere over there, atrocities in awful Adesh. But throughout the year, the threat has crept closer and closer to home. Tourists slain on their sun lounges, aeroplanes blown from the sky. It seemed nowhere was safe.
A major breaking story in Paris tonight. Reports of explosions and shootings. It's a shocking and confusing picture.
129 people were murdered in Paris and hundreds more injured by 7 Islamic State terrorists.
As horrifying news coverage played out across screens of every size and shape, a mood of fear and paranoia took hold.
Now, this place here is...
There's shit happening.
There's something going on here. People are running. We're gonna... Okay. People are running away.
There was a palpable sense of events spiralling out of control. Anyway, everyone agrees this is all far too scary to ignore. The question is what to do about it. And some think that means confronting the issue at its source, Syria. But how do you solve a problem like Syria? Syria is a hellish tangle involving a brutal regime, rival rebel factions, extremists and vested international interests. It's a civil war, a proxy war, an ideological conflict and a monumental humanitarian disaster all at the same time. Little wonder some want to treat the problem like a malfunctioning old TV, give it a bang and hope it sorts itself out.
Sure enough, the government was soon fielding a vote on whether we should bomb Syria or not.
David Cameron informed an anxious nation that this was the right thing to do.
So it's in the national interest, it's the right thing to do.
But then he says everything he wants to do is the right thing to do.
It hasn't been easy, I know, for many people in Britain, but it's, I think, been the right thing to do. And I think that's the right thing to do. The right thing to do. I think this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. I will do the right thing for the country. I did last time. I would again. It was the right thing to do.
Labour leader and cycling proficiency badge holder Jeremy Corbyn was in a tricky spot. As a pacifist, he hates war, but he couldn't vote against it without causing one in his own party. In the event, MPs voted to bomb Syria and suddenly we were at war, which we already were up the road in Iraq. Basically, they voted for more war.
These are the planes the RAF have been flying in attacks over Iraq and are ready for use in Syria.
As the news channels turned into excited commercials for all the missiles and military hardware we'd soon be using, Labour careered into a civil war with itself.
Well, here, the recriminations in the Labour Party from last night's Syria vote are still ricocheting around Westminster and beyond.
As you can see from the coverage, the infighting's become so bitter, even Assad looks at the Labour Party and goes, don't fancy getting involved in that. Bombing is one response to terror, scapegoating is another. For years, many have treated the entire Muslim faith as synonymous with extremist atrocities carried out in its name. There are constant calls for Muslims to denounce terror, which they do daily, but the media finds that a bit too boring to publicise. I guess if they were denouncing it while firing an AK-47 into the sky, the news might pay attention. Atrocities like Paris fuel anti-Muslim sentiment still further. Of course terrorists don't represent all Muslims any more than Greg Wallace represents all mammals. This shit is everyone's problem, and most people instinctively know that. They even shout it at terrorist suspects.
You ain't no Muslim, bruv. You ain't no Muslim, bruv. Said it all much better than I ever could, and thank you, because that will be applauded around the country.
Wow, he thinks something somebody else did was the right thing to do.
Of course, in the current fevered atmosphere, there's no shortage of people expressing an opposite sentiment.
The plan? Number 1. Get a gun.
Oh, God, not you again. Sorry about this. I was hoping to keep things festive for the last few minutes of the show, but this is what happened.
Buy one legally, learn how to shoot it, and be primed to use it.
Do you need to buy guns in America? They're probably just lying around.
Donald Trump is running for President of America and the President of America contest. Americans like Trump because he's got loads of money, which is sort of their version of being clever. I mean, he's built all these giant buildings and written his name on them so no one else can steal them. He's all over the news. Like, the news can't stop filling their screens with him, even though he looks sort of weird. I mean, he looks like a sort of guinea pig staring at you through the porthole on a washing machine.
There's this amazing stuff on his head. It's not hair. It's like a sort of furry gas. It's like he was born with a squirrel's tail and he's brushed it over his head to pass among humans. As well as looking like a sort of biological car crash, he's got this gimmick. He says horrible things about people, totally slags them off.
I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there. That I can tell you.
He slagged off John McClane, who was a Vietnam War hero.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
He slagged off loads of women.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
He said horrible things about Mexicans.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
He took the piss out of a reporter with a disability.
You gotta see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
It's like if Frankie Boyle decided to use his powers for evil.
One of his enemies is all Mexicans, who he wants to build a wall around. He says Mexico's the new China, which it isn't. Tupperware is the new China. He hasn't thought that through.
Then there was this mass shooting in California like there is every day in America. But this wasn't one of the normal mass shootings that a maniac does for no reason. This one was carried out by two maniacs for some ideological reason.
I mean, it must be scary to think the terrorists have got so good at infiltrating America, it's almost impossible to tell them apart from your normal unhinged maniacs. I mean, you could be calmly minding your own business in the middle of an everyday mass shooting and suddenly realise it's a terror attack. Anyway, then Donald Trump said he'd ban all Muslims from entering the country. And suddenly, even though he'd been saying all these Hitlery things for a while, that was just too Hitlery for everyone.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Basically, everyone said he was horrible. They started calling him a fascist and that he was starting to look and sound like a racist dictator. Like, even Dick Cheney went on the news and said it was wrong. And he's the bloke who invented filling Muslims with water till they say they're terrorists just to make it stop.
Drop up the jab, drop up the jab, the Trump is dead.
Super Trump!
A lot of pundits predicted that support for him would fizzle out after the summer. That doesn't seem to be happening.
It's exciting watching footage of his rallies, thinking, oh, this'll be in a documentary in about 20 years' time with ominous music on it, and here's me watching it live.
He says all these things that aren't true, and loads of his followers don't trust the media, so they believe whatever he says. So he can basically create his own mental reality and have thousands of people blindly agree with him. Actually, saying it out loud makes him sound sort of terrifying, but luckily he's also got silly hair you can laugh at. I mean, there's no way Hitler would have risen to power if he had some weird physical thing that made him look silly. You know, like stupid haircut or a little moustache. Oh, fucking hell.
The controversy and news on terrorism over the past month seems to have given Trump a boost. Back in late October, there were signs he had started to fade. Since then, he's jumped 13 points in that same poll.
Oh, God, you know what? This is making me think there's no hope. I mean, look, you've got this kind of lunacy.
Get a gun.
You've got maniacs slaughtering anyone in sight. You've got fascistic demagogues capitalising on the whole thing. No wonder that bloke's hiding out on the moon in that poxy, stupid John Lewis advert. It looks like the safest place to be right now, because down here, it's all anger and fear and carnage and despair, and I just wish there was something to take my mind off it. Just anywhere. Oh, look, it's Dave's Epic Strut. Dave's Epic Strut, everyone. Well, that's all we've got time for. I'll see you at some point next year. Till then, go away.